What's going on, CDL fans? This is my way too early power rankings as of October 31st, 2022. This is right after MW2 dropped. I haven't watched any of the super early scrims yet. We know every CDL roster now, and the season begins in December. Obviously, scrims are already starting up, as well as, S&D tournaments. So I'm definitely excited to start watching those, but this is based on nothing I've seen so far, just totally based on looking at rosters. Let's kick this off with my 12th ranked team, which is, of course, the Las Vegas Legion. Overall, I think this team looks decent. I do think they look better than they did last year. But, Clayster hasn't had the greatest years. TJ hasn't had the greatest years. ProLoot still has a lot to prove. And then obviously Temp has been pretty good. So definitely still a lot to prove, but overall not great from them. Then we move into the next team, which is the Florida Mutineers. We kind of know what to expect from Major Maniac and Havoc, but bringing in two rookies in Brack and Vickle definitely gives them kind of this X factor that I really could see them jumping up, or I could also see them, being down at the bottom like I have them now. Just because we don't really know what too much to expect from these rookies, I do have them down pretty low. I just think in terms of their veterans, they don't really match up to some of the other teams. Then next up, I have the London Royal Ravens. Now, I actually think this team could be really good, but I just, based on looking at the other rosters, I couldn't put them any higher. They confirmed that their team is going to be Nasty, Zero, Paul X, Asim, and Scraps. So that is a 5-man roster, so I'm not really sure exactly what their starting roster is going to be. I believe Scraps is on their bench to start. I do like this team. I personally really like Zero, and I really like Asim. I think that both of them are really good players. But, Nasty's pretty inconsistent. Asim's pretty inconsistent. Zero has his inconsistency. Same thing with Paul X. So I think this team could be good, but right now I just have them down here at 10. Then at number 9, I have the New York Subliners. This team could also do really, really well this year. We know how good Hydra is. We've seen how good Skies has been in recent years. Priesta hasn't had the greatest years in the past few Call of Duties. And then Kismet obviously has been kind of bounced around in and out of the league a little bit. Last year, he looked really good towards the end. So I have high expectations for Kismet. But overall, I don't know. I feel like there's the missing pieces with this team. And, Priesta, I think if he replays really well, he can be the X factor for this team and push them to be really, really good. But if he kind of plays how he has in recent years, I don't know if this team really has what it takes to be the top team. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Guerrillas at number 8. I think they could be higher. I really like Arcides. I think Arcides is one of the best ARs and one of the best leaders in the league. And I think he's really going to get the best out of these guys. And Smart, Neptune, Hook are all grinders, and they're always playing, 8s and chows and tournaments and everything. So I know that they're grinding super, super hard. But there's just something about this team that I feel like, I don't know. I still want to see more from Spart. Hook and Neptune both haven't been the greatest, this past year. And I know what we can get from Arcides. So overall, I could see this team being really, really good if they put it together. But right now, I think that puts them right in the middle of the pack at 8. Then at number 7, I do have the Toronto Ultra. Now, I do think Toronto has an interesting roster here. They have Insight, Scrappy, Standy, and Kleenex. If Scrappy comes out and plays as good as we think he is and wins Rookie of the Year, like pretty much everyone's probably predicting, this team can be amazing. I know a lot of people are really high on this team, but I just can't put them too high up on my rankings just yet, because just based on rosters, which is what this is all based on, meant to be way too early rankings. We have a rookie on the team. We have Standy who's coming off a down year. Insight's coming off a down year. Kleenex looked really good last year, like he always pretty much does. But overall, this team needs to put it together, and I do think they could be really good. Coming in at number 6, I have the Boston Breach. I personally like this team a lot. I know a lot of people aren't too high on them. Zinni, Methods, solid AR. Awakening was one of the best players in Modern Warfare 2019. Now, obviously, this game is not the same as Modern Warfare 2019, especially because, there's no side canceling in this game. But with a lot of similarities, I do think that's something to take into account. And then Nero and Vivid, I feel like our duo that, started to put it together towards the end of the year a little bit last year. And I think it'd be really, really good in an aggressive, system, which is what they run, especially with a pretty aggressive flex like Awakening behind them. I think this duo can do really good up front. Overall, I think this team is going to pretty much have the highest engagements in the league for the most part. Methods is probably going to sit back. If he can, keep up a little bit with the rest of the team, I think this team can be really, really good. Then at number 5, reaching our top 5, I do have the Minnesota Rocker at number 5. I personally think this new Rocker team is really good. We got Attach, Cammy, Bance, and Afro. I think this team can be really, really spectacular. If they all play their roles properly. I think they have great leadership in Bance, Cammy, and Attach. All 3 of them can be good leaders, in my opinion. I think they have good composure. They have that veteran talent as well as the young talent in Afro. Overall, I think this team can be incredible. Now, coming into our top 4, I thought the top 4 was really easy and really hard at the same time. I do have Seattle Surge at number 4. I wanted to put them at 3, but I just feel like the teams above them, I feel like I have higher expectations for the teams above them. I feel like Seattle overachieved towards the end of last year, getting third at champs, and I don't necessarily have that same expectation for them. I do expect them to be a top team, hence why I have them at number 4, but I do think this team can be really good. I'm interested to see how the likes of Pred and Sid play in a Modern Warfare style game compared to Vanguard. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. Then at number 3, I do have Optic Texas. I do think I have high expectations for this team for 2 reasons. One, Shotzi and Illy won champs in Modern Warfare 2019, and we know how good they were at that game. Like I said earlier, way different movement system, no slide canceling, so I'm not taking that too much into account. But I do expect them to kind of, pick up a little bit of what they did in 2019, as well as with the no slide canceling. I think that plays into a lot of veterans in this league, like Scump, who is, comes from an era of no slide canceling and more bunny hopping, drop shotting, kind of jumping around corners type movement. So it might be even better for him in a game like this. I'm excited to see how Optic Texas do, but coming up to 1 and 2, I do have Atlanta FaZe at 2 and LA Thieves at 1. I feel like it'd be a little disrespectful to put Thieves anywhere but 1, being as they're coming off champs. This is a too early season rankings, so all I can do is go off of previous years, and I do think Thieves are gonna be really good. We saw a good Envoy was in 2019, we saw a good Octane was in 2019, so I do think this team can be really good, and they're coming off a champs victory. I do think you could argue FaZe at 1, obviously, because it's Atlanta FaZe, and they have a really good team. Similar to what I said with Scump, you have Slasher, who's more of a veteran player who might thrive in less of a crazy movement type game. So I do think FaZe are going to be really, really good, and I'm interested to see how they play in a game that's less slide cancel-y and, a little more jumpy and drop shotty. I'd be interested to see how Sympabeezy and Celium play in this. But yeah, that's my power rankings. Now I'm going to hop over to a tier list and kind of show you the tiers I think they fit in. Like I said, now I want to put them into a tier list, but I do think there are kind of tiers in here where you can sort of switch the rankings overall if you want to base it specifically on a number like I just did last time. So I do think there are tiers in here. So let's get into this list. I think for me personally, towards the bottom list, I have the Las Vegas Legion and the Florida Mutineers. I feel like these two teams just don't really stand out to me as ones that, I'm expecting a ton from. They have players that have sort of had down years in recent years. Also some young players that have a lot to prove. I kind of have them towards the bottom. Then I think in the next tier, and don't really mind the tier names, I think I'm just trying to show you the tiers. Next to the next tier, I think like London, New York, LAG, Toronto, and Boston all kind of fit into this next tier of teams that can be up in the top half of teams or also can be really close to the bottom. I think there's a lot kind of, with these teams that, not really sure exactly what to expect, tons of new roster moves across these teams. And I think that they can be really good, but I also think if they don't click, it could be really bad. Then I think the next tier is sort of like Minnesota on its own. I personally think this team is going to be really good, but I do think that, they're not as good as the 4 above them, but they're not, they're not bad by any means. I really think this team has so much individual talent that I think they can click. And I almost think they're sort of in their own tier right now. They could be kind of down here and they could also be in the next tier, but I'm gonna have them in their own tier. And then I sort of think that Seattle and Optic are in their own tier, and then LA Thieves and Atlanta FaZe are in their own tier. I sort of think this is kind of how it fits. Like I said, don't mind the S, A, B, C, D. I don't think that necessarily is what they mean, that one team, D tier. But I do think this sort of is where they fit in. Like I said, I think you can kind of move Minnesota down here maybe, or maybe take like Minnesota and Boston and somewhere in there, like something like that. But I do kind of think this is how I'd put them based on tiers. Either way, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know who you think is the best and worst team coming into the Modern Warfare 2 CDL season. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.